Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Welcome back, everyone. I am really excited to have a conversation with my guest, Amber-Lee Lyons, today, the founder of Chakra Girl Co. We are going to be talking about all kinds of really, really cool things, multidimensionality, staying in higher dimensions of consciousness while being on Earth, creating new high vibrational energetic pathways, soul mission ascension, all kinds of things. So welcome, Amber. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. And it was very funny that when your PR company, I guess, reached out to connect us, and I had just started following you too, or you had just come across my radar, and I was like, that name sounds so familiar. And it happened within the same week. And I was like, oh, crazy. Yeah, let's do it.
That's an awesome synchronicity. So can you start out by kind of telling us who you are, where you are in the world, and what brought you here in terms of your spiritual awakening journey?
Yeah. So I started this journey probably about 15 years ago. And it was very slow. I think a lot of people started learning about spirituality and chakras and crystals because I was a hot mess in my early 20s. And that really led me to learning about chakras and healing myself and realizing oh, I don't need to be a certified Reiki person or certified crystal healer in order to heal myself or in order to heal other people. And I was like, why don't more people know about this? At this time, it was probably 2012, so quite a while ago, where there wasn't really anyone who I felt that I resonated with doing this stuff. And so I just decided I needed to be that person. And I actually launched initially as a jewelry line, and I was selling crystal and gemstone jewelry. And then I had so many people reaching out to me being like, what chakra do I balance to start a business? Or what chakra do I balance to find my purpose? And so it kind of morphed into this kind of spiritual mentoring, business coaching kind of thing. And then as of last year, I completely washed my hands of that, and I made a retirement announcement. And I decided that I just wanted to be in creative mode. So I launched the Rituals by Chakra Girl app and just took it back to basics. And it's funny because when I had the jewelry company, I actually had a meditation that came with every piece. And now it's I've kind of gone back to the beginning, and I'm launching a new jewelry company, and I'm focusing on these rituals and these meditations in the app. So it's been a full circle over 6 years. But yeah, I did the whole successful business coach, traveling the world thing. And now I'm, and I was living in a city center and all, traveling every 6 weeks to LA for my podcast. And it was this, big life, lots happening. And now, in 2020 that was definitely more of a second awakening, and really just a homecoming of realizing what's actually important in life. And that's when we decided to move to a small town. We're now just as of April moved to this really small golf community in the mountains, and everything's just totally different. And it was just a mass stripping away. And I feel that's what so many people have felt in this kind of second wave of awakening that everyone's experienced in 2020. It's just been a huge release.
Yeah, a really big reshuffling of priorities, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And just a release of the things that we thought were what made us happy, or that we thought what made us interesting or fulfilled or aligned. And not that those things are bad, but I think at this, I'm in the phase right now of it's all stripped away. And now it's okay, where do I want to build now?
Yeah. And so that's really cool to hear the way that your business has evolved. And I feel like we don't often, or I don't feel like I often hear that sort of story where, you get really successful in a certain area in like a businessy coaching kind of way. And then you're like, nah, I'm done. I'm ready to like, go back to my first love. But
Yeah.
usually we hear like, oh, then I went to the next level. And then I went to that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think like everyone's like, well, why did you retire? Like, what was it? I was like, okay, I have a third dimensional answer, a fourth dimensional answer, and a fifth dimensional answer. My third dimensional answer is that I was jaded and like annoyed at people not doing the work. My fourth dimensional answer was that I literally was going through like another awakening. And I felt like during that second awakening, it wasn't the business that kept me going and kept me ascending. It was the rituals. And I've always said we're meant to share with the world the thing that changed our life the most. And there was a time where stepping into my purpose and my power and, launching this business and, traveling and all those things was the biggest shift in my life. But at the very foundation of that, the very root of that, it was my rituals and my practice and my ascension. So I almost felt like it would be a disservice if I wasn't focusing on that. And then the fifth dimensional answer is kind of similar to that. It's like to make a bigger impact, and that I'm not here to wake people up, but through doing these rituals, like it's gonna eventually lead to you waking up even deeper.
That's amazing. And I would love to talk about that because I'm in a similar place insofar as I'm a very like claircognizance and clairvoyance are my main gifts. And I'm a very information person. So like being a channel, receiving it and transmitting it is like kind of where it's at for me. But this year, ever since January, I've been feeling the very strong instructions that, okay, now though it's time to like apply it. Like, like almost the way that the instructions came through, are like, it's time to go, meaning like, okay, now we're actually like, what it feels like is actively, consciously merging into our plasma light bodies through the application of these ascension processes. And we can't just like digest the information anymore. We have to do things. So tell me about what that looks like for you and your app too.
Yeah. And I've been feeling that as well. Like I've been getting that same message for the last probably like 6 months where it's like, okay, it's not enough to know the things and teach the things and to like do the things as you're teaching them. It's like, for me, what that looks like is like, and I want to say daily, but it's probably not, like, definitely I'm doing daily rituals, but daily ascension work, like research and, applying things to my life and being like, okay, if this is the download that I got today, how am I actually in each moment applying that with spiritual discipline in my life? And that for me has been like the last 6 months of like really applying it, which has left me with less time for work. So that was kind of where I was at too, where it's like, if I'm running the 7-figure business, I'm not sitting there and reading different spiritual texts throughout the day because I've got other shit to do. So for me, it was like to be in creative mode where my job is to create and to share my experience and making that my job and making that my purpose. It's then now literally me doing my rituals is the fucking work. Like that is my work. And that's also my job. Like it's my inner work, but it's also my job now. Whereas before it was really a lot more like strategy and business. There always was a spiritual element to it, of course. But now that all of that has fallen away, I've got so much more intentionality behind it. And it's become more of a mission. But that being said, like there's a lot of stuff that I'm not sharing. Like there's a lot of the inner work that I'm still sorting out. I'm not going to share it until I have like a really good grip on it. But I think, it's really just setting aside that like intentional space for spiritual growth. And then also having like the discernment and the spiritual integrity throughout the entire day and practicing it all.
Yeah, that I love all of that. And I'm so curious as you're talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, you sound like you have a very strong soul mission. Do you resonate with being a starseed at all?
100%. Yes. Yeah. It's definitely, and there's a lot. I've been told that I'm a little bit of everything, but Andromeda is like my number one That's my jam.
That's
And
totally what I was feeling. I feel like
okay.
you're an Andromedan Pleiadian hybrid. So mainly Andromedan, little.
Yeah. Well, and it's
Pleiadian
interesting.
that.
I've actually never fully resonated with the Pleiadians. And I think it's because once I started connecting to them, and it may have been a dark entity or something, but still haven't sorted this out completely. But within a couple months, I had like an emergency surgery and had to get my appendix removed. And so I kind of like put up this like, no more Pleiadians. They're evil. They're not for me. So I'm like, and then I kind of like came back to them and I felt again like a very dark energy, and I don't know what it was. And I know some people like love their energy, but for me, it did not feel right unless there was just some kind of something that was pretending to be a Pleiadian, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I would be curious to know what that is, but I'm going to try not get derailed.
I know. I haven't been like brave enough to tiptoe around it and see what's going on. I want to keep my organs, okay? But yeah, like, well, with Andromeda, I had never actually heard of it. Like, I had heard, this was like years ago, and I had only heard of Pleiadians. I was reading, what was I reading? Something Barbara Marciniak, I think. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to like play around with this a little bit. And I had this like very strong energy come in that was like, hey, like, I'm basically like, we are the same, like I'm a fragment of your soul. And it was like this big blue muscular guy. And I was like, where are you from? He was like, Andromeda. And I was like, never heard of that. That's not a thing. And then I Googled it. I'm like, oh shit, it's a thing. Okay. So that must be real. So yeah, so that I've always felt like a deep connection to.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So how do you, okay, I'm just curious, if you connect with this, like you understand yourself as a spiritual being, you feel very mission oriented on earth, where are you in your journey in terms of like being able to navigate the realities of being, a human here and being like a galactic or cosmic being as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, grounding is so important. And that's part of like my daily practice is like doing the grounding work. And for me, like getting into nature, because like literally my consciousness is like out there, like it's not in my body for the majority of the time. So I don't want to say that I'm the best at this because I'm not, like, and when I do ground, there's a part of me that's just like wants to like escape back up there. So this has been a part of my work. And one thing I've really been working on is setting foundations and creating like mini matrices in my life. And I'm just really working with the law, like universal law of structure. And it's wild because when I do anchor in to that like earth matrix, but like not the false matrix, obviously, like when I create my own little structures, it allows me to be a little bit untethered and it allows me to like really flow within it rather than this kind of like scattered version of like always being in the upper realms. So it like gives me that anchor, and I feel like I can flow more because I have those anchors, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. One of the people that I follow, the way she talks about it that I love is like that structure, that divine masculine principle is structure is like kind of what allows us to be in our divine feminine, but have that be exalted rather than being like a hot mess sprawled out on the floor with a bottle of wine. Exactly. Crying about
exactly. That's me too sometimes. But no, yeah. And like for me, like it's as simple as like a spreadsheet sometimes. Like if I have a spreadsheet of a plan for something, then within that plan, I can like move and grow. And then the downloads come and like everything just like magically happens. And I feel like lately, like in the last 2 months, especially, it's become even more powerful. Like just having the intention of a structure has made the kind of like physical manifestations pour in so much more. And I always used to say like, manifestation is not a 7-step process. And and it still gets very like diluted in this online world, right?
Okay.
Like it's kind of fluffy and whatever, but there is something to be said about allowing our humanness to create a structure in it that allows our non-humanness to create and like bring the magic to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, okay, hold on. Where do I want to go with this? Because there's so many things that you said that I want to talk about. Like, for example, grounding. Yeah. So also I've been getting very similar information where it's kind of in the past I thought of grounding as like grounding, boring.
Yeah.
I'm also very just in my field, not so much in my body. And like a really cool thing that I learned is that apparently like there's a guy named Donnie something or other, and he like really has studied our fields, and he's like some people just aren't meant to be in their body. That's not it's not their happy place. Their field is where their happiest, but they still need to be connected to this earth plane.
Yeah.
And I realized that like if we're not connected even deeper than our root chakra down into our earth star and even deeper than that, then we're missing out on tapping into like the literal resources of the organic.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking about this morning of like the outer chakras and how important those are, because it's like if we're only connected to like the main 7, then we don't feel super comfortable there, then we're not going to be as activated as we can be. But if we feel more comfortable outside of that space, we can really bring that energy in and like anchor it into the body. So one thing I've been practicing is 12D shielding, where I've always been one to like anchor into the core of the earth every morning, just like energetically, but I've been doing it with this like 12D Merkaba platinum light exercise and anchoring that in, and then bringing that back up and like just really making sure that I'm syncing up with it, and then doing the same thing to like the higher consciousness. And then there's just kind of like this shield that goes over you as well. So that I feel like has been really helpful. And even just the intentionality around it. Like, okay, I want to be more connected to earth. Like so I've been like going for hikes and things like that. And even just thinking about it more, like being more in tune with my cycle and like just those kind of like human earth things that we should be tuning into, which doesn't really come naturally to me. Like I see these people like, crushing these herbs and, doing all these like earth things. And I'm like, that ain't me.
Yeah, I relate completely. Like I admire it so much. And I just know that it's not my thing.
I know.
But so my root chakra like totally repatterned me because I went through a big autoimmune flare up, which required me to like totally overhaul my diet.
Right.
And it was very interesting when I realized like, oh, I have to like do these things. You know what I mean?
I know.
I am in a body. I have to eat, and I have to eat mindfully.
I know.
Very, very dialed into what my body needs. But it is that grounding element that
totally
I think we're being called to, because as you said, like if we're only working on our main 7 chakras, we're limiting how much we can access. There's like an infinite wealth and gold mine within those 7 chakras, but there are also the other transpersonal and we're being called into them.
Yeah. And I think that like for people that I know, even for myself, even while I was teaching this stuff, I didn't teach the outer chakras for a long time because I was kind of teaching that more kind of like beginner girl. And I wasn't really even studying them, but they will drop in, but you need to understand them. And obviously adding the intentionality around them is so important. So yeah, just doing that like upper and lower work has been definitely like the opening of consciousness, the opening of like more Christ consciousness. Like I like wouldn't even say like the word God like 2 years ago. So, and then that was almost unintentional. And then I was like, okay, I get it. Christ consciousness in the 9th dimension. And then it like dropped in because I opened my outer chakra. So now it like makes sense. And I've been able to like be more intentional and like teach more about it. So yeah. And that kind of goes back to what we were saying is like, as I've continued to like see my own shifts and my own expansions, I've been able to like translate that into a way that's like more digestible for my audience and kind of like take them on that journey.
Yeah, I would love to talk to you about your perception of the Christos consciousness and the opening of those higher dimensional portals, and how that information comes through to you, how you understand it, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still work for me. I actually like bought a Bible and I'm just like trying to like sort it all out. But for me, I feel like Christos consciousness is not just Jesus Christ. I feel like it's every ascended master. And I feel like we all have that energy as well. And that when it's awakened, we are just gonna start being like more curious about it and start connecting to it more. And I think that traditional religion has led us to believe that like only special people have this energy. And that's why, we've been we've been played a bit. And so I think the work is going to be the trusting of our ability to work with this energy. And that's what I've really been working on as well. And I've been seeing definitely seeing a lot of shifts, people saying, oh, the veil is thin. Like it is really fucking thin. Like things are coming through really, really fast once I started opening that up. But yeah, I'm still a student in this and still learning. And I think for me, like my intention and purpose around this right now is to just get people used to the concept. And that's what I've been like trying to like slowly do, because a lot of people have such trauma around the word God, around Jesus. And I think just like adding light to that right now is important.
I agree.
I'd love to know like what your perception is on it and like where you're at in that journey.
Yeah, well, I'm very similar to you. Like I am definitely a student on this path, or like I'm in the process of applying it, and it's constant work.
Yeah.
But it's like just the most beautiful thing to do. So I agree with you. I feel like the term Christ or Christos means anointed, and it's not only applicable to the man that we know of as Jesus. It is applicable to all ascended consciousness that access that level of awareness wherein they can like be immersed in the illusion of realm and see it for what it is.
Yeah.
And therefore then the holographic simulation has to respond to their level of lucidity rather than us responding to the holographic simulation.
Yes.
And it's centered in a space of divine love, in like where the heart is the bridge between heaven and earth. So to speak.
Yeah.
And it feels like it requires constant application, and I'm not even close to having it anchored in, but I also know that perfection isn't required. It's just like the intention.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, when I feel triggered, I can breathe into it. I don't have to push it away. I don't have to be afraid of it. I can explore it. Nothing bad is happening to me, even when I perceive that something bad is happening. There's a deeper layer to understand it.
Totally. Yes. Yeah. And just recognizing our own power in it as well. Like not giving away our power, feeling like, I don't know. I'm just so anti like spiritual hierarchy. You know what I mean? So it's like, I agree with having teachers, of course. And I also agree with like having a structure. Like if someone is offering some kind of course or something that's going to allow you to work on your ascension, it gives you a container of time and space and a structure to actually do it. But at the end of the day, so many people give their power away in being like, this person is going to heal me. It's like, no, I'm not going to heal you. You're going to heal you by recognizing what's already inside of you. So I think that's like a big shift that's going on in this like online world too. And I love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like so many shifts are going on where we're kind of in the new age spiritual community where we're seeing the false ceilings that have been put on that information for a long time. Yeah. Do you have any like, when you're kind of looking at the new age spiritual community, since this is also your area of work, are you seeing like some of those ceilings come down and seeing things that even like you kind of believed in the past that you're like, oh, wait, that was distorted or capped or limited in some way?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer that everyone is playing at a different level and doing their best. I don't necessarily think that there's people, well, okay, sorry, I don't believe that. I believe that there are people in like the higher, like, multi-million followers that are part of the matrix that are like telling false information. But like, I don't necessarily think that, like, a lot of people are saying that like the spiritual community is infiltrated and then this person is infiltrated and this person's evil. I can see it in their eyes. And like, I don't buy into that personally, but I believe that there are people that are teaching different levels, and the way that different people teach it is going to resonate with someone else. And is everyone like 100% right and accurate on everything? No, because a lot of people still have trauma. I still have trauma. So I'm sure I'm teaching about things that I'm seeing through my lens that isn't necessarily 100% through like Christos lens of love. And so I feel like, but I feel like there's like this like attack going on and this like anger of people getting mad at each other for like not teaching at like the highest level possible. I'm like, okay, well, if I were teaching at the highest level possible, this girl who just got out of fashion school, who's starting to dabble in spirituality like I was 15 years ago, she's not going to listen to me if I'm up talking about that. And then she's going to have no one that she resonates with, and she's not going to go on a journey at all. So it's like, I feel like I'm starting to be able to identify more that there are, and I don't want to say levels because I just feel like that's again like a hierarchy, but I just feel like there's different, I don't know, just different, I don't know what the word would be, just different kind of like ways of providing information that are going to resonate with different people more. So yeah, when I see this kind of back and forth, I'm like, what? Like, aren't we all just like doing our best and like trying to help people? Like, why the attack? I don't know if you see that as well.
I've seen it kind of, and I've kind of like steered away from it deliberately just because I don't know. And I don't ever like personally, I don't want to like name drop or do anything like that because I don't actually know. I don't, if I have not had a conversation with that person and confirmed for myself that they are deliberately misleading people, that I don't want to make that claim. But also I think that the reality is that people who are teaching in the kind of spiritual new age or truther or whatever online realm are just people. So that means that we have unintegrated shadow and it manifests in certain ways that, we might, it's like in our blind spot. So there are some people that I can see where I'm like, I don't always feel like that person is in their highest integrity, but for all time, it's in their blind spot. They don't see what they're doing.
Totally. Yeah. And I totally feel that too. Like there's certain people where I'm just like, oh, well, you're saying that from your own shadow. But at the same time, it's like the work is to have compassion and honor where they're at. Right. So that's part of the journey too.
Yeah. But in the new age community, I do see like looking back, I can kind of see where certain teachings, it's almost like they weren't grounded deeply enough or something like that. And I don't know if that was hijacked, like if it was a deliberate stealing or if it just was what we were ready for. Right. But it feels like, and maybe that's why both you and I and so many other people are probably getting the instructions to ground and to practice. Yeah. To share the processes. Yeah. It's like if it's not grounded, then we can't actually do that.
I know. And so that's one thing I've been talking about a lot too, is like this kind of like, I'm in my feminine excuse to not move forward. Like, oh, I'm just like flowing in my feminine. So yeah, I'll like, in a few months, maybe I'll do it. I'm like, okay, like, what are you afraid of? Like,
or it makes me think like, I'm in my feminine. I'm just going to like call in my riches by masturbating with my crystal wine and my yoni egg. And
exactly.
And my silk lingerie and all the millions are going to come.
Exactly. Or I'm just going to meditate on it. And I'm just like, okay, like, I just feel like the truth of feminine energy is that it's multifaceted. It's like feminine energy is not lazy. Like I feel like I need to get that. Like I feel like that's an Instagram quote there. Like feminine energy is not lazy. And some people are like using their like laziness as and saying it's feminine energy. Like feminine energy is fierce. She moves. She is like, she has that warrior energy. And but like I said, of course, like having that masculine foundation is what allows her to be that way. And if you don't have that, like you said, you're like chaotic and your energy is drained because you're not tethered, and then you're a puddle and like you can't do anything.
Yeah, totally. And I will also say that sometimes that is me. And I'm definitely learning about because I'm a very right brained person too. So I'm learning
Me
about
too.
the importance of that beautiful divine masculine structure that like holds us.
Yeah. Well, and so I've always said like, so, and I always thought, and I think this is like a big kind of like, I don't want to say like buzzword, but like a big kind of like trend is like talking about the feminine and masculine energy. But, and I always used to falsely think like, oh, I'm so in my masculine because I'm always, working really hard and like doing all these things and strategy and blah, blah, blah. But the masculine, because the feminine wasn't integrated and I wasn't utilizing the masculine energy from a place of empowerment, I was using the like fight or flight masculine. And that's why I was like working so hard and getting so much done. But then that burns out the feminine. And that burns out like the true masculine structure. So it was like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, making a ton of money, doing really well, and then burning out. So that's been like such a journey for me of like learning how to go from this kind of like fight or flight, all or nothing, feast and famine. I don't want to say feast and famine because there was always money, but but this like, these like big bouts of work, money, output, energetic output, and then like major exhaustion, now to being like, okay, my app is $7.99 a month. And it's like slowly getting more and more subscribers, more and more subscribers. And it's like a slow, steady growth. And to me, that is a very masculine, supportive, like loving, like masculine energy. Whereas before it was from this like frantic masculine energy that had no foundation and no structure. And if you think about like as a woman, what do you want a man for? You want him for support, for structure, for foundation, for comfort, and that's what and for providing. And like, that's what that energy is supposed to be doing. But we have that energy inside of us. So like, how can we both create that, like that providing, that nurturing, that structure, that support for ourselves so that we can like slowly grow and it doesn't have to be slow, but I mean, steady. I think steadily is probably the better word.
Yeah, I agree. I get what you're saying. It's like incremental, which then becomes exponential. But
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
almost sustainable versus that adrenaline fueled.
Exactly.
And so that's really interesting. I think that's an amazing distinction to make. And I'm curious, do you feel like that was a trauma response to work that way?
To work. Oh, 100%, 100%. I just felt like that was all I knew. That was that to me, like I said, like that's what I thought masculine energy was. And I didn't understand that differentiation because I still felt like, oh, I am providing, I'm supporting myself, I am, but it was through it was a very non-grounded masculine where it felt more grounded than my feminine. So I thought it was grounded, but it still wasn't grounded. And I had this reading in, when was it? This like Akashic reading. I can't remember when it was, but she basically said like, and she put it into words so beautifully. She's like, you need to like lay the pipes. She's like, you're living in like this house, but there's no plumbing. So it's like, you need to like set up all the pipes underneath it so you can actually like thrive in this house. And I'm like, that's exactly it. So that's why for me, it was like, okay, I need to tear everything down and rebuild a foundation. And then now from there, it's like, I can do anything from there.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's amazing guidance to receive because when you're talking about it, and I think this applies to so many of us, whether we're entrepreneurs or not, it doesn't matter. We just, we're all healing the wounded masculine and the wounded feminine. And
Totally.
I can think of the ways that it applies to me. But as you were talking about it, I was like, oh, yeah, if you're always functioning, like when we're in that state of hustle and working from that adrenaline fueled flight, fight, freeze kind of
Yeah.
response, what that is operating from like a survival. So it's
That
kind of like tapped into, it is the masculine, but it's tapped into
woundedness.
fear of it running out, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
you have to keep going. You have to keep the adrenaline pumping. And rather than living off of like, you know, balance and homeostasis in our energy field, it's living off of adrenaline
Yeah,
and taxing our whole entire system.
totally. Yeah.
Mhm. That's an amazing distinction. And so is that what kind of that's what kind of led you into examining the universal laws and coming into the application of the universal law of structure?
Yeah. Well, I was studying the universal laws and I didn't realize that structure was one of them. And when I found that, I was like, duh. Like, where, like, and it's an obvious thing, right? And for some people, that probably comes natural. But for me, it again, like, it allowed my human linear brain to understand like the quantum possibilities and like the quantum manifestations that can come from that. But it's like I almost needed to like see it written out, that it kind of was kind of the summation of everything that I was feeling and everything that I was lacking. And so once I implemented that into like so many different areas of my life, then that's when, everything quantumly has started, really happening for me again. And it's been really, really powerful.
That's so exciting. And for all you listeners, we're going to do a little bonus special episode to share on Patreon if you're a subscriber about the universal laws. Because to me, as you're talking about it, like I'm so excited to hear about them because I can see the way that, like, in the quantum field, it's just this soup of probability.
Yeah,
Apply the laws, you give that soup something to turn into. But
exactly.
when you do it that way, it's much more aligned than it
Mhm.
is if you're trying to like do it from the 3D way, which is like taking the linear steps and pushing to make things happen.
Yes, exactly. And I think even just understanding them like that alone is going to like illuminate some things, and then applying them as we talked about, like the message coming through to like do the work. But it's not necessarily from a linear place. It's more from like an acute awareness of like in the moment, recognizing like, and again, like law of like the laws, like consent, for example. So something happens and you're like, I'm scared my freedom being taken away. Oh my God. But then it's like, if you implement, oh yeah, law of consent, I'm good. It's like just remembering in those like split moments and bringing yourself back to that anchor of truth. And I do believe that the universal laws are like absolute truths. So that alone allows us to feel grounded and anchored. And it's not for you and I who kind of have more of the like head in the higher dimensions, like it can bring us right back down. So that's been super supportive for me.
Yeah. So exciting.
Yeah.
And then I would love to also hear about creating your perspective on creating new high vibrational energetic pathways. Are you talking about like timelines and sort of like manifesting new timelines?
Totally. Yeah. 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 So I mean, healing past timelines is like number one, but like the law, like, so we talk a lot about like the law of cause and effect, the law of suggestion. And like when it comes to creating new timelines, it's literally like there's like the triangle of manifestation, right? There's consciousness, space, and time. So, creating the conscious conception of it and then bringing into space and time, like when we look at it from that kind of like linear law type of way, it's actually quite easy. So, and then we add the structure to it, and I don't know, I just am finding it so much more easy to wrap my brain around these concepts rather than just being like, oh, okay, so I can just make what I think, it gives it that weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And then as we're wrapping up, I would love for you to share more about your your app and like what people can find. I've been checking it out. It's really beautiful. But what people can find, I feel like it's a really powerful tool for somebody who, it looks to me like at any point on your spiritual awakening journey, like there's advanced stuff and there's kind of like going back to basics.
Totally. Yeah. And it really is for anyone. But at the same time, it's like, I still go back to basics sometimes. It's like, okay, my sacral chakra is feeling off. I'm going to do a little sacral chakra meditation. I don't necessarily need to be like traveling to the 12th dimension every single day. So it's good because it's separated by different categories. You can look, okay, what do I want to manifest? And then there's like a specific like abundance manifestation section. You can search by how much time you have. You can search by, different chakras. You can search different types of advanced rituals. So it's something that you can just keep in your toolkit, because I know for myself, I'll like find a ritual and then I'll like do the same thing over and over again. And sometimes even to just think of like, okay, what should I do next? Sometimes it just doesn't come through right away. So just to kind of have this at your fingertips, and it's almost like can be used like an oracle too, like just like flip around and, click and see what comes up. And yeah, there's really something for everything you want to manifest, anything you want to feel, anything you want to release. Of course, there's a lot of like shadow work and all of that as well. So, and yeah, like I said, like we've been talking a lot about foundation. At the end of that, like consistent rituals are what create quantum expansion. So it's really that foundation, that like number one thing of, okay, have I checked in with my higher self today? Have I done the work on my mind, body, soul, energy today? And when we're doing that consistently, it's just like eating healthy, right? Like this is your health food.
Yeah. Cool. That's so cool. That must have been quite a project to develop that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I mean, it was and it wasn't, because they did everything, but like the videos alone, like for me, I just kept like putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. And then they're like, oh, we're done the development of the app early. And I was like, I have no videos. So I was just like, okay, I need to sort this out. And I just like bang them all out. And yeah, I just like add new ones every week. We just did actually a 14-day challenge on the universal laws. And yeah, there's like new rituals dropping every single week. And now it's nice because it is like little bite size. Like, so I'll record like one day every 3 weeks or something. And then I'll just kind of like slowly drip everything out. And it just allows me to be, like I said, in that creative space. And it's like, I'm sharing the rituals that I'm doing or the rituals that I did in my past that changed my life. And yeah, it's like, it just gives us that space and that kind of container to do the work that we may have been putting off, or the things that we, want to work on, but we didn't really know exactly how to do it. Okay, I really want to work on my throat chakra, but you don't know exactly what you need to do. So it's like, it just really gives you that toolkit.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Like it just gives us somewhere to start. Cause I agree. A lot of times just sort of like, I know I want to do this, but I life is so complicated already that I just need like, I need somebody to show me how to do it. I need
Exactly. Yeah, like it removes the guesswork, and it removes the like, I don't know, almost just like the time, like for me, like as someone who has a business, and I'm sure you're the same way, like the idea of having to make another decision, like if my husband asks me what's for dinner, I'm like, I can't. My brain can't do that right now. So it just releases the decision part, which is nice.
Yeah, totally. And you have a podcast too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Chakra Girl Radio. We've been around since like 2018 now. And yeah, it's been really fun to watch it evolve. It used to be a little bit more like poppy, kind of like celebrity driven. We were having like reality TV stars on and stuff like that. But it was always about, okay, what are the spiritual rituals that led to your ascension, that led to your abundance, that, what are the hacks? Like, tell us how you got to where you are spiritually. And now it's definitely gone so much deeper, and it's really like evolved with the audience. And we like to mix it up. Like sometimes it's more like nutrition based. Sometimes it's about past lives. Like there's all kinds of different topics, which is really fun and keeps it dynamic. But yeah, it's just like, oh yeah. And we go into like all like the, 4D conspiracies too, because that's just fun. And, and yeah, I love it. It's a great time.
What's your favorite 4D conspiracy?
Oh my gosh. Well, oh my God, there's so many. I love them all. Well, right now, like I'm just obsessed with like the whole, like reading into the whole like fake food propaganda and like the like eating bugs and Beyond Meat and all of that, and how like how many like nutrients are actually in red meat and how it's been like demonized and all these things. So that's an interesting one for me. I actually had a guy on my podcast, Dr. Anthony Chapey, and he's like far on everything. He practices like the carnivore diet. And so I love to just have like opposites. Like, so I'll have someone like that on that's talking about like eat only meat. And then someone who's like, this is why you should be plant-based. And I like to like, just kind of pick them apart and be like, well, this person said this, like, what's your take on that? And then to just give people the information and have them kind of come up with their own kind of like conclusion or like what works best for them. So I don't shy away from, asking people what's up.
Oh, that's exciting. And I'm totally going to have to listen to some of those episodes.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect example, actually, of like, I was kind of struggling to think of an example of the new age, like, I don't know, false things, but that is one of them where on one hand, I feel like it's perpetuated very instantly. And on the other hand, I feel like there is like an underhanded kind of nefarious underlining to it. The idea that in order to facilitate your spiritual ascension, you need to go plant-based.
Yeah.
Which is like, on one hand, I feel like I get it. Like when I tap into higher dimensional realms, I'm like, yeah, we eat less there. We have plasma light bodies.
Yes.
We're eating like very light filled things.
Totally.
So I can see how we get to this place where we're like propagating the idea that plant-based or like total veganism is the way to spiritual expansion.
Yeah.
But I can also see that like my body, for example, with my autoimmune situation, I have to eat meat. I have to. Meat is like the cornerstone of my diet. I've never felt healthier, never felt like a clearer channel. So I'm like, okay, there's definitely something.
I know. Well, and then if we look at like who owns shares in Beyond Meat and like all of those things, and just like looking at like the whole agenda in general, I mean, there's so many layers to it. And I don't think we'll ever know, but like, damn, it's more fun than like watching TV to read into this. Like real life is way more interesting than the shit they're putting out in Hollywood.
Especially these days.
Exactly. And that's the thing too. Like I used to be at a place where like this stuff would stress me out and I'd be like, oh my God, like they're coming for us. Like, and I was like really in this place of fear around it. But it's like the more I understand and then the more I understand the spiritual laws, I'm like, oh, right. I'm anointed. They can't touch me. We're good.
Right. Totally. The law of consent, right? Like every consent.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not in my field. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has been such a beautiful conversation. And we're going to end this main conversation portion. And we're going to go deeper into those universal laws and what they are and how to apply them. So if you want to hear that awesome conversation and be schooled by Amber-Lee, then join us on Patreon. But otherwise, thank you so much, Amber, for this portion of the conversation. It was wonderful. And thank you, beautiful listeners. Oh, wait, I have to ask, where can they find you? I mean, you have your app,
yes,
you have your podcast, but where else?
So Instagram is Chakra Girl Co. The app is Rituals by Chakra Girl, and you can find it all the places. And if you would like a free month, you can put in coupon code podcast and get a free month.
Cool. It's a beautiful app. I've been playing around with it for a few days and I highly, highly recommend it to anybody that's looking for a way that is affordable to apply these kind of like spiritual concepts in your life. It's very beautifully laid out, very functional interface. So definitely 10 out of 10, recommend. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. And thank you, beautiful listeners, for joining us in this conversation. I love you so much. I hope you have a beautiful day or night wherever you are. And I'll catch you over on Patreon or on the next episode.
Whether you are just starting out on your spiritual awakening journey or you're ready to dive deep into activating your psychic gifts, I have a complete store ready for you to learn all the things that you are looking for answers to. I have light codes to upgrade and calibrate your consciousness. I have a class on the first 13 dimensions, a class on dark entities, a class on the human ego from a multidimensional perspective, and powerful modules and bundles on psychic activation, with more classes and courses being added all the time. In fact, I just added 3 classes about the Christ light frequency and the holographic field that have been selling like wildfire, and I get a ton of messages from people who appreciate this content. I truly love to serve you all, and I do my best to translate all the downloads and transmissions I receive from the Akashic Records into this library of information for you. You can find it all at amybelair.com/store. Enjoy.